Okay, good enough. We will begin. Amitofo, join palms, vow. The four great vows. I vow to deliver innumerable sentient beings. I vow to cut off endless vexations. I vow to master limitless approaches to Dharma. I vow to attain supreme Buddhahood. Okay, hello to you all. We're going to continue today with the study of Chan and its roots, and we're really going back in terms of the roots to a time of what is actually known by some scholars as Proto-Chan. And depending on the scholars, they'll break it down into different categories. But I like the term Proto-Chan, which is the burgeoning of the Chan school. Before it's called Chan, before the patriarchs that are there. And this is important for us to understand historically and doctrinally what was happening, what was being presented in China, because our focus here on this Buddhism is the development of Buddhism in China. This is where Chan is. This is our topic for these past few weeks, is the development of Chan. But I want to first, as I had been talking about Shifu before, about his interest in laments as well, about the practice of Chan, and I found the article that of his concerning this, and I wanted to read it to you. Last week, I think I paraphrased it, but I think it deserves discussion because it's something that is very, very important. And it's something important to you, the ones that are listening to me today, because you are some really what I'd call hardcore students, people that are really interested in the practice, and in particular, the practice of Chan. This is something that Shifu held very dear. And it is the inspiration for me and the, I would say, the realization of what Chan is. And that was important for me to do. And sometimes I'm kind of like talking like this foolish man, and just talking sometimes maybe a little bit too deep for some people. But after a while, you begin to go like playing a flute. And in the beginning, you're just kind of going, whoop, whoop. And after a while, there's actually notes that come out. And then you realize, hey, you know, I can play this too. And that's what, to me, gives me really great Dharma joy. In the beginning, when I first started practicing, Dharma joy was just coming to a retreat and practicing and quieting the mind and seeing that what Shifu was talking about really, really worked. But later, the Dharma joy was when I share this with people and that I can see that they have that Dharma joy too, that they have this, a realization of what the practice truly is. So with that preface, let me read this part, and forgive me because the print is really, really tiny. I don't know, you know, maybe it's 2-point type. It's very, very small, but let me see what I can do. The reason that Chan Buddhism has not been well recognized and accepted today is because Chan Buddhism has not focused on educating and training capable practitioners who not only understand, but also have deep experience in the teachings of Chinese Buddhism. This is because few really spend time studying the wealth of our tradition. Nowadays, even Chinese Buddhists are critical of Chinese Buddhism. In the future, Dharma Drum Mountain members will continue to come into contact with great practitioners of Tibetan and Theravadan Buddhism. It will be easy to become enchanted by their elaborate systems of doctrine and practices, and how these teachings can benefit people's lives. Other people's lawns will always seem to be greener. If we really do not understand the depth of Chinese Buddhism, naturally, we will not be able to discuss or experience the Bodhidharma as they do. Naturally, we will be converted to other forms of Buddhism and lose our own identity. If this happens, then perhaps Dharma Drum Mountain will become a global Buddhist educational center that encourages the study of all forms of Buddhism. On the positive note, this could be a good thing. Dharma Drum Mountain might even become an important center for the study of Indian, Tibetan, and East Asian Buddhism. This would not be unlike Nalanda University of the ancient India, where Buddhist monastics studied different forms of Buddhism, including the middle way and the consciousness only, all under one roof. Yet wouldn't it be a pity to witness the decline of Chinese Buddhism? How can the potential disappearance of Chinese Buddhism be good news for the global Buddhism? The worst scenario would be that Chinese Buddhism ceases to be the practice for the Chinese, and the humanistic and socially engaged teachings of Chan Buddhism at Dharma Drum Mountain begin to fade away. Thus, I reiterate that Dharma Drum Mountain needs to stand firmly behind Chinese Buddhism. If we fail to do so, then those who wish to study Chinese Chan could only turn to Japan, Vietnam, and elsewhere. Let me see this. I'll continue a little bit. I also need to reiterate that my teachings are grounded on Indian Buddhism, very important point. My book, Orthodox Chinese Buddhism, which I wrote many years ago, but published recently in English, is based on the teachings of the Agamas. I have also given various lectures in Taiwan and the United States on Majamika and consciousness-only teachings. These teachings are now published. The most recent one is my commentary on the verses of the Eighth Consciousness. My studies of these doctrines have deepened and broadened my own understanding of Buddhism as a whole in my efforts to make the Buddhism accessible to more people, with an eye on developing the humanistic or Buddhism, humanistic form of Buddhism that would address the needs of our society. I've been promoting Chan Buddhism under the banner of inheriting the past, inspiring the future. My endeavor is not to compete with other Buddhist schools, but to fully develop Chinese Chan Buddhism. I think Shifu's words are important and for an inspiration and also a lodestone that to set our course as to what we should be doing. As he said, he did not just simply study Chan Buddhism or teach on Chan Buddhism, but Madhyamika school, consciousness only, the Yogacara school. No, Shifu, he also had told me to study the Abhidharma. And so I've studied these schools, and just like Shifu, I've given lectures on these particular schools as well. I've never lost sight of Chan Buddhism because Chan Buddhism is extremely unique. If we study the Abhidharma or Madhyamika or Yogacara, Tiantai school, Huayan, we study in a very limited school. And the boundaries of it are set. the difference in Chan Buddhism, there are no boundaries. It's infinite. It takes everything that works from the sutras, whether they're from the early Buddhist scriptures to all the way through to the Tathagata sutras, and puts them to work and puts them to practice. And that is important. This is why our school is a very noble one, and that's why Shifu is lamenting. People, they'll get drawn to going to practice Mizong, the Tibetan one, where you're visualizing a big mandala and you're seeing all these things and colors and figures and patterns and whatever, or the Kasinas of the Theravadan school, and you're focusing on certain colors and patterns and things to develop concentration. Nothing wrong with that, but people get bedazzled by those things and attracted to it. And they're not attracted to just sitting, mo chao. That's boring. That's like sitting on a bus waiting for your bus stop. And they don't understand that. And so because of it, Chan has kind of gone by the wayside. It's not as attractive as these other schools, but it is incredibly deep and incorporates other schools, incorporates their understandings and works at it. And that's what's important. But we have got to study. We have to study, and we have to not only study. Chan is not per se a school that we say I'm going to teach Chan, which obviously I've told you many times, I have nothing to teach you. But to introduce certain doctrines and things, I cannot do that in a vacuum, because all of these doctrines come pouring in from the various sutras that were established. And they were, as I'd mentioned before, these echoes of things. But the understanding that we have is that we want to pass this on to others. And this is important. This is really the realization. We don't do it for us to establish a scholastic level or get a degree in Buddhology or philosophy or history. We study it for the sake of preparing these jewels so others may accept them. And this is important. I remember many years ago, I was invited to write an article for a book, and so in the book, I talked about Chan. I talked about the principles of Chan, and the author of the book, the editor of the book said, "This is not essentially interesting or exciting. You're talking about Chan, you're not talking about your experience." But my experience was passing this on to other people. It was the bodhicitta that came to the surface. It was always there, but it came to the surface in such a way that inspired me to follow the path of Shifu, to understand that this was something that we pass on to people, not because we want to show how smart we are, or how deep we are, or how profound we are, or how wise we are. That has nothing to do with it. I have no time for that kind of stuff. My interest is to pass this on to the next generation, so they will pass it on to the next generation and go into detail in order to study. And that was what the realization was. But they said, well, that really wasn't a realization. It wasn't. And that was the problem, because at that time, that particular editor didn't understand what I was doing. Maybe in my inartful way, I didn't say, there was a big giant light that shined on me and beamed me up in front of the Buddha. And, the Buddha said some words to me and said, go and live well and prosper. It's like that. But it's a okay, thank you. And but it wasn't that way. It was just this incredible surge of energy focused on delivering sentient beings and caring for sentient beings, and to try to bring them to a realization, to share this, not to say I am here and you are here. Everything that I do, even if I whack you, it's so you can come up and go beyond me. You have to see the compassion. And I was thinking about that today, that I really love you all. And it's something that I see you all as as Buddhas, and I see you in a way in which I really want to bring that aspect out in you. This is the realization. It isn't anything else. If you look at it and I try to describe something that has really nothing to do with the present moment, this present moment, and what I'm doing at this point. If I study, I always study now for the sake of passing it on to others. And sometimes my, how would you say, my interest in that is that I will send some of you now particular passages that I think might inspire you. And you go, where did you get this from, Gilbert? And I was doing that with Esther. And when I did it with Esther, I think I burned her out because I gave her so many of them. And then my daytime is her sleep time. And so she feels compelled. She has to read all of this stuff, poor woman. But the thing is that I'm trying to trigger something in you to see and take this little piece and see that anything that you study, you can be, it can move you forward to a realization. You don't have to read the entire Lotus Sutra or Vatamsaka Sutra. Probably one of the biggest mistakes I made early on was I tried to read the Vatamsaka Sutra from cover to cover. How many of you have read it from cover to cover? Raise your hand. How many have read parts of the Vatamsaka Sutra? Yeah. Okay. So when we see it in this way, we understand, okay, there's a lot. It's kind of like the beginning of the Bible when so-and-so begot so-and-so and so-and-so begot. No, so many begots there, you kind of lose interest in it because I didn't have any understanding of that. But what I found that sometimes if you just open up a sutra to a page, you will find that in opening up the sutra to a page, that you will find something just on that page. Sometimes people ask me a question, I just go to a sutra, open it up, and it's kind of very interesting. The answer is right there on the page for them. And then I just copy it and send it off to them. My lazy way of presenting the Dharma. But it works, and people can see it and they can apply it, and it makes sense to them. So this is something that we have this aspiration to do. It's not that we're trying to get this brass ring and the title of that you are enlightened, or somebody had given you enlightenment. Like Master Ling Chi said, don't be so quick to have anybody put their mark on you. In other words, say that you're enlightened. It's probably the worst thing that can happen to somebody if they believe it. So what was the famous words, Eon, that I think it was from Master Boshan's master?
Not yet.
Not yet. And that's probably the best thing, because people go, well, what about this one? And they'll do it. And that's okay. I still look at it and see it, but you're probably going to get a not yet from me, because it's something that moves a person more and more. and there's a delicacy sometimes to do it, but sometimes you have to do it in a different way. So there was one master that said, sometimes I take away the principle and leave the practice. Sometimes I teach them the principle and tell them to hold off on the practice. And sometimes I tell them to do neither or to do both. And it just depends in that moment what the person is stuck on. If they're stuck on something, maybe they're stuck on emptiness, then you have to move away from that. And it's important what I'm telling you right now, because this is how I work. But we're going to look at this in a moment, and this is going to be the segue into what I'm doing. But I wanted to start with this because what I want to do is let you know what you're doing on the cushion. And this is something that's very important because our school is one that is Mahayanas, the higher vehicle, that we are interested in the deliverance of all illusory sentient beings, albeit that they're illusory. We still want this deliverance, but it's not easy for us to understand that. And it's not easy for us to understand how, for instance, the Nianfo fits into that in the context of our school, which can be certainly something devotional, or I hope I get into the Western Pure Land. I hope I get into the Western Pure Land. And if you're going Amitofu, Amitofu, did I say it enough times to get in? Then you mess it all up. In the sutra, Infinite Light Sutra, it said that if you recite the Amitabha's name sincerely 10 times, you're guaranteed a ticket to get into the Western Pure Land. So I mean, you recite, but it's much deeper than that. And so then one of you was writing me about this today, and they were saying, well, then what does a bodhisattva go into the Pure Land? Can a bodhisattva go to the Pure Land even though that they're beyond? If the Pure Land's a place to practice to become a bodhisattva, can a bodhisattva come into there? And I wrote, a bodhisattva is the Pure Land. It represents the Pure Land. Where is it going to go? Everywhere it goes, it takes the Pure Land with it. So it's important to understand this, because this all comes back to the idea of ekayana, of mind, and not just of mind and emptiness, but Buddha nature. And that's very, very important, because that was there from the very beginning. Now we can get into the Proto-Chan, and let me see if I can find more difficult reading. This time of the day, my eyes are burned out as it is. Let me see if this is.
Gilbert, can I share something?
Yes, go ahead, because it'll take me a little bit of time. So go ahead.
All right. So you're talking about the Pure Land and the Bodhisattva. I, in a retreat that I was in with Master Shengen, I asked Master Shengen about the Dharma Dhatu nature is all created by mind that we were chanting. And he said, well, that doesn't mean that it's magic like Harry Potter. And people just started laughing because they're like, oh, Shifu knows about Harry Potter. But it's like Amitabha Buddha, how he created the Pure Land, his Pure Land. From it all began as a vow. So, and how Dharma Drum Mountain came to be, it all started as a vow. So just wanted to share that in light of what you just said.
Yeah, the thing is that the practice is maintaining the vow. We don't look at it as a means to an end. We look at it as maintaining the vow. The vow will ultimately be fulfilled through our vow that the vows of the donors be fulfilled. And that's all of us. That's all of us as Buddhas, or we could say bodhisattvas. Now, I don't want to get into too deep into the history at this point, but to give you a launching point for what I want to say. Now we're going back. I'd already talked about what's happening currently and how we apply this. And in this one historian, Buddhologist, Wayland Lay, Lai, he was talking about these shifts before 600 CE, which is before we were involved in the all of the patriarchs. And he was saying before 400 CE, the emphasis was on emptiness and the immortal soul. After 420, it was the two truths and one reality. So this was more reflecting of the Majamika school of the two truths and this one reality of the two truths. So this is interesting. Around 500, there were speculations of Buddha nature. And around 550, there was a synthesis under the one of Ekayana, the one vehicle. And so this is kind of an interesting thing, because this is kind of the progression that was following as it moved from the Nikayas to the Mahaprajnaparamita, the Wisdom Sutras, Diamond Sutras, etc., into Tathagata Garbha Sutras, and there was this shifting, as he calls it, and I think that's a good way of saying it. I always talk about it almost like the monolith from 2001: Space Odyssey, where something appears and shifts everything, moves it. And so the emphasis of the practice, the focus of it has now modified. This is very important for our practice and very important to understand how Chan works. So let me see here. Apologize, it takes me time because I'm reading tiny writing, like really tiny writing. So it's hard for me to like go and then talk to you and then go to this and try to read it. So that's what takes me time to kind of get my eyes adjusted. Okay. And I'm going to jump a little bit in terms of this, but you'll see why in a moment. The Chinese did not embark on their quest for higher one truth without a reason. They had gathered from the Nirvana Sutra that the final Buddhist teaching of the universal Buddha nature constituted the one truth. This suggested to them that there was a positive truth. This is important. It wasn't just emptiness. There was a positiveness there in this truth. Above emptiness and the two truths being apparent reality and absolute. Or we could say apparent truth and absolute truth. And we've talked about this in a way of phenomenal and noumenon, which is from the Tian Tai school, but essentially that which is the knowing mind and that which is looking at the arising mind. They're not different, they're the same thing. Because the human consciousness does not function in that way, it is inconceivable for us to be able to understand that, at least in a words and phrases. It was while they were looking for a way to reconcile emptiness and this one truth that they came across the treatise Chen Shi Luan. Did I get that right? Chen Shi Luan. Nobody knows.
It looks like Chang She
Luan.
Lin.
Lun. You found what I'm reading from?
Yes, I did.
Gee, wow. This is like a very arcane thing that I got from like 9 years ago. All right. And it says, so it's on establishing the real. And it said that it reduced all the elements to their finest parts until virtual nil was reached. So everything, was reduced down until nothing was left. And it says, also among the Four Noble Truths, he considered the third one about nirvana, the one truth, the other three describing the nature, the cause, the way out of suffering, were too mundane to be considered transcendental truths, which kind of makes sense there, because those are all the things that are limited to samsara, the phenomenal world. So we study it in the phenomenal world. But it's interesting because if you remember, I said that the Buddhas use the afflictions of sentient beings in order to practice. And so this is something that they're looking at, these three, but the Buddha is essentially, you could say, incorporates all of that, but in a way where that's phenomenal, and that there's this Buddha nature that's there, and a positive Buddha nature. And so because using, and I'm skipping the name of the person that was studying this, basically Hinayana schemed to explicate the Mahayana emptiness of Nagarjuna, and the one truth turned out to be a mistake, which Qizong again would later undo. So then they're talking about now locating the Buddha nature. And so in the Nirvana Sutra, there was reliance on leaving or blowing out the light, and then ergo then one becomes a Buddha. But there was still this missing part about how the Buddha nature could be. So it says China was attracted especially to the doctrine of the universal Buddha nature, so much so that Xuanzang's Yogacara school was later called the Hinayanists. This is Hinayanists are using, this is like really outdated language, because it's kind of like politically incorrect now. That would be Theravadan. And so it says, simply for deviating from it by teaching the Buddha nature, the Nirvana Sutra seems to reverse the earlier Buddhist teachings of no self and initial Mahayana teaching of universal emptiness. And so that it said Dao Shen circumvented the problem, noting succinctly that there was no samsaric self of life and death, but there was a nirvanic self, which was Buddha nature. Again, we're talking about Proto-Chan, proto in Buddhism, and moving towards a clear aspect of what Buddha nature is. So it's interesting because they're looking at it and saying, no, and this is where everybody gets caught, because you cling to the idea of the samsaric self and think that you can polish this roof tile and make it a diamond, but it isn't in this way. You have to see the totality of everything in terms of it. Actually, that term, the totality, was a term that was used. Oh my gosh, my brain doesn't want me to access it. Tian Tai school. Okay, it was a Tian Tai school of the totality of all of mind or consciousness. And so then it says, hang in there with me, because I'll bring it and make it clear in a moment. I just want you to listen to it. Still, this was not always easy to keep the Buddha self from being confused with the Taoist immortal soul, despite all cautions against this. And this is important, and this goes even to today at this point in terms of Buddha nature, because a lot of Buddhist philosophers, historians, different people studying Buddhism, they're quick to jump on this wagon that says that if you're going to establish Buddha nature, you have now created a monistic religion, such as Christianity, where you have a supreme being over everything else. But that was not what was intended. What was intended is to show that this emptiness is there, that everything is connected through the law of dependent origination. And it's governed by pratika sampada, causes and conditions never fail. But there is an interest there in the suffering, in spite of the fact that those who are suffering are in a dream state created by the mind. It is still the body of the mind. It is still part of the Dharmakaya. And it would be like you were living on one bedroom in the house, and then the hallway gets dirty, and you go, well, a lot of people walk in the hallway. Why should I vacuum it? No, you do whatever you're going to do, whatever it is. You maintain a pure land in terms of things, and you do this in a way in which you try to clean up the environment. It doesn't matter who's polluting it. You understand that that's there because of ignorance. But there is this aspect of mind that has an interest in resolving these issues of suffering, irregardless of the fact that it is an appearance in a dream. This is Buddhism. This is right to the very major part of Buddhism. Like Shifu said, that all the words revolve around the mind as the hub. And when you see this, this is how it works. So we've gone now from the point of, from before, of blowing out the light and the nirvanic aspect of it to reach nirvana, and then the heck with everybody else, what about cousin Ricky? Well, we'll get him some other time. I'll write him a card or whatever. I'm out of here. It wasn't that way, because they looked at it and went, wait, that's kind of like it is. I'm kind of using modern day language to say you're blowing off cousin Ricky. But it was, this is kind of a Nagarjuna's way of showing, how ridiculous that is. Rather than going into it and going deeper into it, into this emptiness and ekayana, the mind. And when we see these things in this way, what happens is that now we see there's this incredible functioning, a very dynamic aspect of the mind that's mixed in with all of this, but yet it is not part of it per se, in the sense that it has a belief that it is an independent sentient being, or it's delivering independent sentient beings. It's just cleaning the hallway of the whole house. Why not? It makes sense. And so it's in this way. Okay, so we continue on. And again, I know this is deep stuff, but it's good stuff. It's really good for you. It's like taking vitamins, or taking medicine. Sometimes the medicine's bitter. But listen, please listen with your heart, because this is good stuff. This is going to make you a really great Chan practitioner. I promise. Okay. And so we get to, then Emperor Wu of the Liang Dynasty. Remember Emperor Wu, because he was the one that went to talk to Bodhidharma, or asked Bodhidharma what merit he got from building all these stupas and everything. And Bodhidharma had told him no merit. But here it says, once presided over a court debate that sought to refute Fa Zhen's denial of the immortal soul. So there was a thing saying, well, no, there's got to be a soul. There's got to be something here. And the emperor wrote an essay establishing the spirit as that which would one day become enlightened, which a lot of you, even though you don't espouse this theory, practice that way. This essay has been criticized for confusing the transmigration of souls, a ghost tainted by karma and ignorance, with the transcendental seed of enlightenment that is the Buddha nature. And here, this pivoting of the theory at this point in time, this is really where the hinge was. if you were going to pin a hinge where all of a sudden Chan enters, this is the place where it's entering, because it's saying there is no immortal soul. You want to do that, go back and deal with the Taoists who are looking for this immortality. We're not talking about immortality. We're talking about Buddha nature. Well, does that mean that there's a God? No, it doesn't mean there's a God. You don't understand that. You don't understand how mind works. So that's what I do all the time. I'm presenting how mind works so you're not confused. So then it says, but the essay did forge a synthesis that anticipated the formula in the awakening of the faith in Mahayana, a text compiled within the next half century in China that became the cornerstone of Buddhist philosophy. Okay, let me read this again because this is really, really important. Again, this is the hinge. And it said, but the essay did forge a synthesis that anticipated a formula in the awakening of faith in Mahayana, a text compiled within the next half century in China that became the cornerstone of Buddhist philosophy. In this text, the one mind, ekayana, okay, so we're holding on to the one mind, ekayana. Sorry, I lost my place. Let's see. Has two aspects. It says the one mind has two aspects: suchness or thusness, and birth and death, which is samsara. Suchness or thusness, and birth and death in samsara. So what are the absolute truths? The two absolute truths. This is an open book test. I just told you right now. Anybody want to say it? Nobody knows what the absolute, excuse me, the two truths. I said absolute truths. I apologize. I gave you one, so you only get half credit. Yes, Mark. You got to unmute him, somebody. Or unmute yourself. There you go. Say it again.
Ekayana, the one mind.
Ekayana. Okay, but in Ekayana, what they're saying is that there's two truths in Ekayana. So this is where Emperor Wu had a problem with all of this. So what are the two truths of Majamika? Like I said, I already gave you the answer. The apparent reality and absolute reality, or parent, it is just those truths. So the apparent is samsara, right? And the other one, the suchness, is the tathagata. And so it's seeing this and saying, these are not two things. This is mine, ekayana. The apparent reality appears within the tathagata. This is very, very important, because what it did was placate the idea of understanding samsara and understanding that it is not separate from mind, and it is neither real nor false. Sounds like the Heart Sutra, right? But I mean, when you're looking at it and you're seeing it, you're seeing the things in this way that you see that the reason they're neither real nor false is because they're fundamentally empty. Now, this emptiness means this: they're fundamentally full of the tathagata. Or if you use the Yogacara school, the eighth consciousness, the alaya consciousness that stores everything. I know I'm getting a lot of deer in the headlights looks, but hang with me. You know, we'll get there. Now, this awakening of faith in Mahayana, how many of you have heard about it? Raise your hand. And how many have read it? Not that many of you? Really? Okay. Very interesting here. Very, very interesting. So misunderstood. So don't make this mistake. And they're saying that, otherwise they'll say, I thought you were Gilbert's student. Well, we make mistakes every once in a while. What does Mahayana mean here? It's saying awakening of faith in Mahayana. Bonus points if anybody can explain what Mahayana is here in this context. Nobody? You guys are that chicken, you don't want to get it wrong? Hi. David almost went for it, but he didn't. Probably it's a good choice on your part, David. Wei Sheng, nothing? No? Nobody wants to say what is Mahayana. All right. What is a traditional definition of Mahayana? Suzanne.
Traditional is Mahayana is the middle way.
Well, it's Maha means high and Yana means vehicle. So it's the highest vehicle. So it is going towards the idea of delivering sentient beings. But here the context is different. But thank you with that. And that's that the term Mahayana here means the Tathagata. It does not mean it's the highest vehicle because it is the thusness of mind. So it's saying awakening to the thusness of mind. That this is it. So there's not a distinguishing between Hinayana and Mahayana here. It is just you're awakening to mind. And that's a perfect name. If I was going to teach you guys, if I hadn't come up with mind work, I would teach you awakening to mind. Because that's what it is. From the very, very beginning, they're teaching you about mind. They're teaching about Tathagata. This is so incredibly important because, like he said, that was the cornerstone or the pivot point that shifted everything so that we went away from a life and being, from a continuation of souls, but we did not destroy samsara. We saw samsara as it is, as a dream, and everything that's phenomenal, everything that moves is phenomena. Everything that moves is a dream. And so when we see things in this way, we don't have to rub it out. We just accept it. And that was what Nagarjuna said. And they asked him, well, can you please explain more? No. What more is there to explain? Just contemplate and you'll get there. And people contemplated, they got there, they got Nagarjuna's ideas, and now there's this incredible movement of the Buddha nature and this incredible compassion that comes out of it. That is what's important. That is what is the realization that this world is not real. And the suffering is not real, as they say in the Noble Truths. But the Noble Truths were saying, oh, suffering exists and all of this. Heart Sutra comes by and says, there is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no cessation of suffering. So there goes the Theravadan theories. And that's why the Heart Sutra was targeted against Theravadan theories of reality, that everything is real. And saying, no, these things should be treated as appearances within mind, but to be real, as Nagarjuna pointed out, and he went through the process of negation, showed that it's impossible to establish that anything is permanent. The only thing that is permanent is pratika samappada, causes and conditions never fail. And all of that points to the Tathagata. And so that's what's important here. It's very important to see all of this, before we move on. And so this is all coming in. In order to get to here, I had to show you the progression in Chan of these theories, because now you have a benchmark upon which to understand these different doctrines of emptiness and the Tathagata and Buddha nature. And now we're seeing where all of this is all coming together and gelling into Proto-Chan. And it is this awakening of the Mahayana that served like a beacon for so many years for everyone.
Unknown caller.
Sorry. My friend Scam wanted to talk to me. Okay. Hang in there. This is part 1 of Proto-Chan, by the way. The Emperor's essay had also postulated a pure core, an enlightened spirit that is somehow inexplicably trapped in darkness. This is more Taoist in its thinking. And also Confucianism, where you're talking about this perfect man. So they're interjecting some Chinese notions in here of the indigenous kinds of philosophy. The spirit itself, being one with suchness, is destined for enlightenment. Ignorance is what mires a person in birth and death. The emperor probably came up with this ambiguous mixture by drawing on the canonical references to the Buddha nature as innately pure mind that is somehow accidentally polluted, or on the idea like Tathagata, it encompasses samsara and nirvana. The awakening of faith might have done nothing more than express this paradox in a more sophisticated way. The similarities do not end there. The poet Sheng was asked, along with other courtiers, to comment on the emperor's essay. In Sheng response, which was miscatalogued as Guang Mingji and broken into a number of independent short essays, enlightenment was a matter of putting an end to momentary thoughts. The same psychology was found in Awakening of Faith, where Wu Nian, no thought or stripping away of delusions, is equated with suchness. This equation would later appear in the Platform Sutra as a slogan of the Southern School, where they talked about Wu Nian, or no thought. So you're seeing how from this very beginning part, it's beginning to formulate into something. Sudden enlightenment is based on the sudden cessation of the thought process. To what extent Emperor Wu, who was a patron of both Taoism and Buddhism, had actually fostered the Sino-Buddhist synthesis of consequence still awaits investigation, but it's perhaps telling that he was also said to have written a commentary on the doctrine of the mean. I'm going to stop there for a moment and just say, there's a reason why in the subsequent compilation of Buddhist masters of the Lanka Vitara, there is this part about Emperor Wu's connection with Bodhidharma, where Bodhidharma was clarifying to him that you receive no merit for all of these good deeds that the emperor had done. And this is directed straight towards that, to say there is not a life in being. There's not, whether it's a corrupt life in being or an enlightened life in being, there's not a life in being there. So even if you tried to polish everything up and try to do all the stuff, you cannot get there. Like I've been mentioning, this is not a stairway to heaven. And it's not simply the cessation of thought. This is important, that we cease the thought, but what has to be present as well? Something has to be present besides the cessation of thought, because I could hit you on the head with a 2x4 and you'd stop thinking. but that wouldn't get you enlightened. It'd get me about 20 years. So what has to be present?
The natural functioning of the mind.
Well, that natural function of the mind is there. There's something that has to be present. It's what I harp on all the time. Anybody? Mark? Or who said that?
Awareness.
Okay. VJ?
I said natural functioning of the mind, that presence of mind in that moment.
Paloma, you were going to say something. Say it. No, don't say that. They said it. Can you unmute her, or she can unmute herself?
Awareness.
Awareness. Okay. Something has to be present.
Compassion.
Nobody knows. No, that comes from after that. Something that I always say it has to be. Senta, do you know? Or you're kind of hiding.
Illumination.
Huh?
Illumination.
Illumination. What is the illumination? How do you become illuminated?
How does one become illuminated?
All right.
One
we'll
already is illuminated.
it's already illuminated, but we don't know that because we lack something. Okay, Mark.
Awareness.
Go ahead, Mark. Oh, all right. Lewis?
I said compassion. I think that you said that was after.
All right. Robert?
It's mine. Everything is mine.
And how do you get there to that realization?
I like my answer.
There's nowhere to go to.
Let Liang
That's
say.
your ego's talking. Okay, Lei Hui.
Right view. Right
What?
view. Right view.
Right view.
Right view.
Are you right about that?
That's what you always said.
There you go. She paid attention. We didn't get to Wei Shan. Wei Shan, he would have said right view too, I'm sure. No. So I saved you a demerit. Right view. You have to have right view. If you're there and you want to turn into something and you're wishing and wishing, it's not going to happen. You have to have right view. You have to awaken. There's an awakening that everything is mine, and that is the awareness of mind. But you have to turn the mind's eye inward. You are always practicing with turning the mind's eye inward. That's what's very, very important. So everything is right view. Everything I do is mind work, but it's predicated on right view. That's what's very, very important. That is what Shifu, as a prerequisite for his Dharma heirs, one of them was right view. And so that's what's important here. Really, this is a very simple but deep class today, okay? But it opens up a lot because it gave you a history of where this is coming from. And I didn't get to what I was going to teach about today, which is right here. You see that? I don't know if you can see the Chinese. That would be like an eye test for you if you can read the Chinese. If you're a Westerner, that would be a miracle. But in any case, we'll get to that next week. But I had to lay the groundwork for this because awakening of the faith in Mahayana, we'd have to say awakening the faith in the Tathagata would be a better way of saying it. Because it's not something that's opposed to the Theravadan viewpoint. It is not Mahayana as it was developed, and there was not a Mahayana then. It was just what they called mind. And so that term was used. Well, if this is a vehicle to get there, then the highest vehicle that's Tathagata. And so it's going directly to mind. This right view is what is necessary for you to practice. When you sit on the cushion, you have to have right view. Otherwise, you just sit there like some onion boiling in some vegetable soup of your own making, wondering how you're going to get out of the soup. And going, what's that smell? Well, you're cooking yourself. But it never get done. So you have to use right view with everything. If you use right view, everything becomes easy. When you're walking around, coursing through the deep Prajnaparamita, some days it's more deeper something else, bovine droppings, but in any case, you see and you have the wisdom to separate out this from that. And you're clear about it. And so that's what's important here in terms of how we look at things. So from here, when we begin to read a little bit of the awakening of the faith in Mahayana, it's going to make sense to you. If not, you would think it's just Mahayana, like all the other terms that we refer to it. But now it's changing because you're seeing this is it. This is this embryonic presentation of Chan that's coming through. It's pulling all of these different aspects in. It's chewing the Confucianism and the Taoism part, and it's holding that up to the light and saying, no, this one's a bad egg, doesn't make sense. But we can still use some of that so the people won't go away, but we just have to clarify it by virtue of right view. Okay, so that's where we end today. I actually accomplished what I wanted to do. I thought it would take me a little bit less time, but it's important that you understand this part. Again, you might think it's a little bit above your pay grade, but it isn't. You all have the ability to understand this. I challenge you to challenge yourselves to do that. And the way you do that is by studying and studying, So, and then don't talk to Santa because she always has the cheat sheets with her. I don't know how she got this one here. This is something I pulled out from 9 years ago, just today. So good for her. Okay, that's it. I will take some questions. Paloma, please.
I have a very, very quick question. Define right view. A very quick.
Right view is just simply seeing mind as it is, not from the idea of samsara, where we believe that appearances govern the reality of things because we simply are using our senses to come into contact with things. But when we come into contact with things, that which comes into contact with them is also an illusion, that temporary arising of what you could call the ego. So seeing that those things are not real, they're temporary. For instance, there's times when you're patient and there's times when you're impatient, but you cannot define yourself as either one of them because it's because of causes and condition. So right view sees everything as it really is. So that's where you're at. Yes, go ahead.
And so what's the difference with awareness?
Awareness is what you utilize with right view. It is the utilization of mind. So I'll give you partial credit and everybody who raised the idea of awareness there, but that awareness must be the right awareness. It cannot just simply be the awareness, let's say, of an assassin who wants to be aware of all the environment so he can put a perfect shot. It has to be the awareness of mind itself, without the idea of any kind of greed, hatred, or ignorance.
Okay.
is pure awareness, what I call naked, and I'm sure you've heard me say that before, naked awareness.
Yeah.
So just think of it in this way. Naked awareness means that there's nothing that's perfuming it. And that's the words they use in Yogacara, although sometimes I go, I don't know if it's perfume, but it perfumes the environment. And then one thinks, oh, this is the best looking person in the world, or that's the ugliest person in the world, just depending on how they look or what they think. But we just see things as they are, and we see that they are a product of causes and conditions. It's a good question.
Thanks.
Paloma's been my student for a long time, and the one thing, her questions are always like right to the point, and I love that.
I keep asking the same question 20 different times. I'm stuck in some place.
For at least 20 years.
There you are, see?
But it's fine. It's fine. You see, I still have patience, because no matter what your question is, it's a question of others. They just don't ask it. So thank you. Yes, Dong To.
Hi, Gilbert.
Yeah.
2 questions for you. Paloma did ask one of my questions, but I do have 2 additional questions. One is, you mentioned that Nianfo has a deeper meaning than just 10 recitations and rebirth into Pure Land. What is the deeper meaning? And the second question is, how does one take rebirth into Pure Land? What's the way to get rebirth into Pure Land?
Say the last part. Something into Pure Land.
How do you get reborn into? How does one get reborn into the Pure Land?
Well, according to the sutra, the Amitabha Sutra, one gets there by sincerely reciting the Buddha's name and creating in mind a desire or an interest to go to the Pure Land. So it's kind of like a guaranteed one if you do that in the right way and if you're sincere. Your first question, I think, was kind of a more important. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
You mentioned earlier in the lecture that there's a deeper meaning to the 10 recitations than just getting into the Pure Land. What was the deeper meaning that you were trying to explain?
We say Amitofo. When we say Amitofo, I don't say that for me to get into the Pure Land. I say it as an invitation to you for practice and to have faith in the Buddha and faith in mind. So whenever we use the recitation, what we do is that we are creating a mind environment of benefit to whoever we're projecting that on. So if we want to help somebody, then we can use the recitation to help that person and transfer merit to them. That's one way of using the recitation. The recitation can also quiet the mind, so we keep the mind quiet. The recitation can also be of devotional aspect of respect to the Buddha, but we have to have right view with that. So we're not creating a higher deity or entity that we're giving respect to. We're giving respect to just this mind, which is the very mind that you're using right now. This is right view. That changes the idea of the Pure Land practice, so that one is no longer simply interested in just going off to the Pure Land, but we're interested in creating a Pure Land here. And so we're constantly doing things like, for instance, in this moment, this is a Pure Land. It may not be a great Pure Land, but it is a Pure Land where this kind of presentation of mind and discussion is there, and people are here and looking into it. So this is more precious. The words that I say of the sutras or whatever, they're more precious than just getting admitted into the Pure Land, which is like when you were growing up and you're trying to get into schools. It was hard to get into schools, right? And you got in though, right?
Yes, I did.
But you studied your tail off.
Yes.
All right. Well, to get into Pure Land, you don't have to study your tail off. You just have to have sincerity and you're guaranteed. You're in. So what? It's like nirvana and the Theravadins, you know. So if the practice, the goal is to get into the Pure Land, you're in. But what's more important is this, and don't ever forget this. You're already into the Buddha clan. You're already into the Ratna Gotra clan. Right now, this very mind that you're using is the Buddha mind. Where do you want to go to the Pure Land? Just start using the mind. Like Ling Chi would say, there, now that you have this mind, use it well. When you want to use it, use it. When you don't need to use it, don't use it. You see how simple it is. It's just in this moment. The Buddha is in the present moment. Just this mind that you're using right now. You go to the Western Pure Land like a rehabilitation place for because of all the samsaric habitual patterns that you've raised, but you're still in samsara. You're in the Pure Land, but the sentient being is still existing or so-called existing. But just in this moment, my invitation to you is you don't need to go there. You're using the Buddha mind now. All you have to do is practice using it. Don't fall asleep. You've awakened. Stay awake. You stay awake, stay awake. When you see some of the people here, they're changing little by little. Sometimes they're changing in major changes. They don't know it. They don't know it because they wouldn't know it because the self's not there. So they don't know how far they've gotten. But it's good. And if they said, you know, to me, how far have I gotten? I'd go, not yet. But it's okay. It's okay. The thing is that this is the pearl that was brought here. I shouldn't say brought here, but was introduced. And that's what I was talking about, this ekayana and this perfection of the understanding of what ekayana means and the perfection of the understanding of Buddha nature. So it's delineated that it's just this mind. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you got that. This is $10. Okay. There's more than a $5 advice. It's a good one for you. Okay. Wei Shang.
It's Gilbert, it's still related to your question earlier. You said that when the thoughts stops, what has to be there? And you also said something like to see things as they really are. But if the thought stopped, there's nothing. And I think the right view is automatically achieved if thought stopped. That's why I like the census answer, which is only left is illumination. And that's equivalent to right view to me. Because right view give you a sense of there's a, well, okay, right view, okay, never mind. So I'm trying to say if the thought stopped, because everything apparently reality is thought. If the thought stopped, naturally the right view is there.
Booyah.
Okay.
No, you're confused here. Your question is a good question. It's a question people don't ask because they're afraid to ask it and have me say booyah to you. But it's important to understand. If that was the case, a person with dementia would be enlightened because their thoughts really just stop. They disengage with society. It's not in this way. And later on, when I go back to Hui Ning, you'll see that it's not an aspect of that the thoughts stop. Because the difference here is that when we say the thoughts stop, in the mind, there's constantly the thoughts that are arising. But some of them are useful to use, like the ones that I'm using now to talk to you. But others, they're not useful, so we don't hold on to them. So the stopping of thoughts is the the illumination or this awareness that Paloma was talking about, some of you were talking about, to see what is arising in mind and what needs to be there. So there's a dynamic function of the mind, and this stopping of thoughts, or what was called Wu Yin, like Hui Neng said, this is different because this Wu Yin is no thought with thought. Okay, it's the same thing. It's just that one does not cling to the thought. So it's not that the mind has no thought. The thoughts are arising all the time, but one does not hold on to them. This is what's called Wu Yin. And that was a clarification by Hui Ning as to this kind of a thing. So it is not the purpose when we sit to meditate to not have thought. We don't have to worry about it. Eventually, the thoughts, because of habitual tendencies, will fall off no matter what. But that's not the goal. The goal is to maintain in Wu Yin, this no thought. Wu Yin is just another word for no thought. But it's no thought, but yet there's thinking. But one is not attaching to it. One is just engaged. For instance, right now, as I'm talking to you, this is Wu Yin. I'm engaged in Wu Yin. Okay. And which is kind of interesting, because going back to what I was saying about this book that I was supposed to show my enlightenment or whatever in there, I eventually wrote instantly that when I speak to people, I have no thought. I don't have to think about what I'm saying. And the thing is that then they're saying, oh, you can't do that, that's impossible or whatever. And you think you're like at this high level. I was innocently doing it because I had no idea. I thought this is what people do when they practice, not when they're enlightened, but when they practice, that you don't have thought. But I was eventually kicked out of the book for saying that. But it's Wu Yin. It is just this way. So when you ask your questions, if you don't have a sense of self, you don't have to worry about whether you get it right or wrong, because you are helping others by your questions. All of you, all of those who posed a question, you're bodhisattvas, you're really helping. And so your question should be presented in a Wu Yin way, not with self. And when I respond to you, I don't try to respond to you to harm you as much as move you that much closer to a realization by tweaking that tiny little bit that is erroneous in your way of looking at things. So I really thank you for the question, and all the questions today so far have been excellent. No, so I don't know if that helps you or not.
It did. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. Okay, Mark.
Thank you, Gilbert. I have a question in regards to...
Hold on. Oh, give me a second. I was reading somebody's question. When the question was, what do you realize when you're caught up and attached to no thought? There is no such thing. Because there's no self there at that moment. There's just the functioning, and everything flows like a river. There's no thought that I am engaged in. No thought. That would be like the hair of a tortoise, or the horns of a hare, a rabbit. It's non-existent. Because when one is engaged in Wu Yin, there's no thought. There's just simply the carrying out the function. Of course, whatever one thinks about, you have to formulate, but there's no thought. And it flows quite nicely in terms of that. And so that's important. And as an aside, afterward, Shifu had called me into his quarters to ask me about this, and he asked me to explain what no thought is to him. And then he said, oh, I believe you because that's the way I speak. And or I lecture. And that's the thing. And he asked me, what about if you gave a formal lecture or someplace? I'd say, of course I have notes, at that point, but the mind's still engaged in no thought, but I still have it, but everything just flows naturally. And that's the way it is. It's an interesting thing because we don't have to cut the mind off of thoughts. We just have to cut off the attachment to the thoughts, from thoughts that are coming in or thoughts that are going out. Should I have said that? Should I not have said that? I need to say this or whatever. In the moment, the thoughts just naturally flow by like a river. Not bad. Okay, Mark, did you have a question? Yeah. Are you unmuted? There you go. Go.
There we go. So I keep getting muted. All right. There's a circular reference that's commonly used in the Diamond Sutra that I hope you can clarify. So I'm just going to read a brief passage. What the Tathagata calls different mentalities are not in fact different mentalities. That is why they are called different mentalities. So that type of circular reference is often used throughout the Diamond Sutra. Can you clarify?
Because if we look at things from the viewpoint of samsara, it won't make sense. So if we're looking at things in these kind of circular arguments where they're saying things, it's just saying, if you have a different mentality, it's not really a different mentality, but yet in accordance with, let's say, the intrinsic nature of the Buddha mind. I forgot the Sanskrit name for it. They talk about this, and they talk about shared experiences and unshared experiences in terms of it, that, for instance, what is in my mind and your mind at this moment can be shared, but what I did today and my memories of that are not shared with you. Okay. And so all of these things, they can be different, but in actuality, where they're appearing is not other than the Buddha mind. So it's a different way of looking at it. And then when you see it in this way, then it makes sense. But you cannot see it from the viewpoint of a samsaric being or the rationale of a samsaric being. You've got to think outside the box to get there. Okay. And so little by little, you begin to practice in this way of thinking outside the box, and it begins to make sense. Okay. And you're qualified to do that because you have the Buddha mind.
Yeah, sometimes it resonates and sometimes it doesn't. So it kind of goes in and out.
Well, that's just keep trying to do that. But that's why they also call it thus come one and thus gone one. But it comes and goes, but it's okay. It's fine. It's always there. You just fall asleep for a while, but that's natural. But just keep going. That's a deeper question. Those are profound, and so I gave you a little bit of a peek with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Robert.
I'd like to go back to Wei San's question. That was very good. In fact, that is a question I have for a long time. But after your explanation, it seems that we're giving so much attention to no thought. Like thought comes very naturally. You can't stop it. This arising keeps on coming. But yet we're giving it so much ammunition by paying attention to it. It's like we're giving it so many bricks to build this pyramid of self. It's like self is there, self is there. No thought, no thought, no thought. Self is there, self is there. But isn't it should be is paying kind of like, you're not trying to ignore it. You're acknowledging the mountain is there. But your attention should be, I do know you're here. I do know the mountain is there. But my attention should be not thought. I mean, not, N-O-T, not thought.
Stop.
It's not, it's like.
Stop. Now, stop. What thought's there now?
Nothing.
Blah, 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 blah. You know, the thing is that it's yourself that keeps arising. You don't see that which is there, but it's not the elixir, it's the addiction. And so you want to know. You want to know. But it's not that you need to know. You don't need to know anything. Like my dad used to say, you know, with the I know, when I'd say, I know, Dad, he'd say, you know nothing. So know nothing. Know nothing. And then where can these thoughts be pinned to? You keep bringing them up. You keep examining them. You keep looking at them, trying to look underneath the carpet to see if there's any dust down there. Forget about it. Just walk on the carpet if you need to get through the room. It's okay. Whatever you do, just like I had said, when you need to use it, use it. When you don't need to use it, don't use it. You don't have to do that. You don't have to grade yourself. Robert, you'll put too much pressure on yourself. You're going to explode. You're going to be like a big giant bullfrog that keeps inhaling until you finally explode. And then that will be the end of you. Maybe you get a better, life the next time around, or you might find yourself back in the well.
A bigger bullfrog.
Oh, well, So don't wait until you croak, okay? You got to get this lifetime. You're working on it. Yeah. But I've got to redirect you because that self is like getting in the way. Yeah. Don't let the self get in the way. I won't yell at too many people, so so don't worry. I no need to call for a restraining order.
Thank you.
I'm trying to order him to restrain himself. So in any case, okay. But anyway, I shouldn't even think. Don't even think about what I said to you. Okay. All right, Lewis.
The other day I was thinking how wonderful the law of karma is, just absolutely wonderful. And I think it has related to how causes and conditions never fail. Are they just like this? Two hands together? The law of karma and causes and conditions never fail. They're just two covers of the same book.
Yeah, there's nothing to pick up or put down with that or to understand. Anything that would understand it would still be within samsara. We just simply use it when we need to use it. It's as simple as that. We don't have to try to carry it around in this treasure box. Okay, it's just like, if you need to put deodorant on, put deodorant on. You don't have to think, is this vile or is this way or whatever. You just follow function. Whatever's there, whatever you need to do, obviously all the different times, I'll pull out my bag of tricks depending on who's there and knowing that I can yell at Robert and he won't quit on me, and the thing is that it's just whatever you do, just do it naturally. That's it. Don't put a special mark on the illumination of the mind. Its wondrous function is really ordinary and mundane. That's probably the key thing that I realized was that mind is ordinary and mundane and nothing special to it. So if you want to see colors, then maybe you should go and investigate a mandala or whatever. But Chan is just right direct to this moment. And it's in that way. And so if you practice in that way, then you'll practice well. Okay. But don't hold it up, we respect the mind, we respect the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas. I'm still completely devotional. Okay, I'm very devotional, and but I understand import of that devotion and the import of mind and the creating a pure land on earth. And that's what's important. That's what Shifu was talking about. He didn't want people to flee, whether they were flying or fleeing to Theravada or to the Tibetan school, Jehovah Witness, whatever. You know, he was, you know, more concerned about establishing a pure land here, and that you have to contemplate what that means. And that's what's important, is so we don't respect it, you know, and put it on an altar without understanding the import of that. Okay. And that's, I want you to do that. It's ordinary and mundane. So to some, you know, I tell them stop. To others, I tell you stop, you know, seeing it in this way. It doesn't mean that it's not wondrous and everything. It's wondrous in a very mysterious way of this dynamic function of being able to help people. Sometimes it's helping them in a samsaric way, just so that people understand this kind of even basic love and affection that's possible, irregardless of whether or not they're your brother or sister, family, friend, or a complete stranger. But at least that gives them hope to look further in terms of that. And then when you see that, it doesn't matter to me who it is, you know, if the Dharma's there, and you just begin to talk about it. So see it in this way, mundane and ordinary, but wondrous. And then you won't be far from it. You'll be able to use it whenever you need to. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I think that's it for tonight. Your questions reflected the deepness of what I was speaking about today. I really am trying to get you to go deep. You know, they have a saying in football, go deep. That means that you have to run all the way down the field, and then you throw up a Hail Guan Yin and pass, and they call it a Hail Mary pass, but we'll say Hail Guan Yin pass and make a touchdown. And that's what I'm hoping that will happen with you. But you've got to go deep. Just like I started with Shifu's presentation for that purpose, to show you, because I knew I was going to go deep with this, but I wanted you to hang in there, not to give up or go, oh, that's too much for me. I'd just rather, you know, just to recite the Buddha's name and not think about it, or whatever other practice you are. But this is the key. This is important. And when we do this in the right way, it is something that is very fulfilling. You will find out why you're here, why you're on earth. And that's important. You know, you have to find out, why the heck are you here? No. So I'll leave that to another time. So next week, we'll start with the awakening of the faith in the Tathagata or Mahayana. And then you'll see how we're going to kind of lace this into Emperor Wu's already in the picture, but this was before Bodhidharma arrives. So it's kind of an interesting way. So I kind of jumped back, kind of like, this is like a Star Wars thing. They used to call it a trilogy. I don't know how many they're up to now, but they're going back and forth, and that's what I'm doing here. But then you go, oh, that makes sense now. So, but you wouldn't have known what happened in the prequel unless you had seen the other one first. Yeah, I've been talking too long. Okay. Take care. Amitofo. All of you there in Washington or wherever, I saw that's a hot spot for COVID right now. So be very careful. Okay. All right. Take care.